Welcome to the Power of Purity podcast, the show that empowers men to experience their sexual gift in a healthier way. Now here's your host, Tony Ingrassia.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Power of Purity podcast. What up? I'm glad that you're with me today. And if you were with me last week, you know that I began a very intriguing interview with Shaunti Feldhahn, who's a groundbreaking social researcher, a best-selling author, a popular speaker. She's a graduate of Harvard University, and she has done an amazing amount of research around the topics of men and women and sex. And she's written books that help men understand women better and help women understand men better. So I'm in the middle of a very interesting interview with Shanty, and we're going to continue that in just a moment. But before I do, I thought I might share with you guys a note that I received the other day concerning the podcast that was very encouraging. It says, "Tony, thanks to you and your ministry, my wife and I are together and surprisingly happy. I have no doubt that things would have turned out differently if not for the miraculous appearance of your podcast at exactly the time that we needed it. I've learned a great deal about myself in the last 15 months and still have more to go. I'm attending a weekly Bible study, which I was doing before, but I've added a weekly SAA meeting. I alternate listening to your podcast with another podcast on my 3-hour drive that I have twice a week. I hope to be able to make another contribution this year. Thanks again." So that was really a blessing. Praise be to God. I'm glad that you found the podcast. I'm glad that it's been a help and an encouragement to you and your wife on your journey of healing. So praise be to God. And I've said this before, but guys, I just really appreciate getting a note once in a while. So if you ever want to write, if you've got a question, a comment, an observation, an objection that you'd like to share with me, I'm open to any and all correspondence. So please feel free to write me a note anytime, and I really appreciate it. And with that being said, you guys, we'll just jump back into part 2 of our interview with Shaunti Feldhahn. God bless you.
And so that's the key here, is that understanding both sides and what's going on in the heart of the other person and their intentions is everything. Because then suddenly you can take it out of the realm. It still may hurt, but you can take it out of the realm of ego, kind of, and that insecurity, and tell yourself she just doesn't realize, she doesn't quite get it. And keep working on that and keep trying to help each other understand.
Right. It feels like just some key understandings of these basic things can really create like a new framework
Totally.
to see and understand
Absolutely.
the dynamics of what's going on, even sexually, in the context of a relationship. So
Absolutely.
the picture that I'm seeing right there, imagine, if you put on sunglasses, like if I put on a pair of sunglasses that were tinted yellow or amber, then everything I see has a yellow tint. It's the framework through which, the lens through which I'm looking. So imagine if we could somehow take that pair of glasses off and put a new pair of glasses on a woman, maybe that are rose-colored. She's going to see it all differently now because she has a different lens to look through. And so
that's exactly it.
You're trying to help women understand maybe there's a different lens to look through, to look at your husband even sexually, and you'll understand some things and maybe appreciate things way differently if you understand some of these basic things about what's motivating your husband and what sex really means to him.
Absolutely.
And so, Shaunti, let me ask you this. A nickel has two sides, right? A heads and a tails. So we're talking about the guy side of it, what's going on inside of a man. Mm-hmm. So can we talk about the gal side of it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do guys need to understand about women?
So just like there are things like we were saying, there's all this emotional stuff. And then I said, and we don't get any of that. We as women don't get any of what you just said.
Right.
We don't know this. And I'm sure that the men listening were like, what? Like, how can you not know this? The same exact thing is true in reverse. Okay. There are things that are going on inside the heart of a wife, physiologically and emotionally, that a man doesn't know at all. And yet again, the wife thinks he does. And so there's hurt and disconnect that doesn't have to be there. So here's the misunderstanding on the part of the men about the wives. So men think if I want more sex than I'm getting, and like we said, there are some couples that are flipped on this, right? There are some couples where it's the wife who wants more. But again, for the majority,
75-25. 75% of the time,
ish.
the guy is the higher sexed individual. 25% of the time, the wife is the higher sexed person.
Right. That there have been a lot of different studies that have been, not just ours, and there's a lot of sex therapists who would argue over the numbers, but roughly, depending on which study you look at, that's roughly the numbers that you see.
The bottom line is that statistically, typically, the guy is the higher sexed individual in the relationship.
Correct. So let's just, in focusing on that group, the men who want more sex than they're getting, the misunderstanding that they have is that if it's not happening, that it means, well, I'm not desirable, right? That's the only reason in their mind that would be the case, is I'm not enough for her. She doesn't want me. I'm not desirable enough for her. And that, as we talked about, is this really painful feeling for men. The surprise for men is that is almost none of the reason why.
Wow.
Almost none. We asked the women on the survey who said they wanted less sex than their husbands. We gave them this big, long laundry list of all the potential reasons why, and asked them to choose any or all of them, like whichever ones mattered to them as a woman. You know what % of women said it's because he's not desirable? 4%.
Oh my gosh.
4%.
Wow.
96% said something else.
See, so immediately, just you saying that to me as a man, then the first thing I thought was, then what's the problem? Because if I'm desirable, then why can't we have more sex? What's going on here?
That's not it. So here's the reasons why. There are a lot of different reasons, but it basically, when you kind of funnel it down, it broke up into two main reasons why. And let me deal with the second one initially here, because it was a big reason. It wasn't the main one, but it was a big reason. And men have heard this before, and it's true, which is that women need to feel close to their husband outside the bedroom in order to want to be close inside the bedroom.
Awesome.
You've heard that before, and it is absolutely statistically true. So here's the number. That's not the number one reason. The top reason, which impacted somewhere close, I can't remember the numbers right now, but it was about 2/3 of these women.
68%, 66%.
Yeah, some number like that, is actually the main reason is actually a physiological difference between men and women. It turns out that there are actually two different types of desire. Okay. And most of us have never heard of this. Like, you should have seen me as when I started seeing the numbers come back on the survey, I was like, I need to figure this out. And started doing all these interviews and talking to all these sex therapists and neurologists and, trying to figure out what's underneath it. And the bottom line is there's two different types of desire. There's something called assertive desire.
Okay.
And someone who has assertive desire has a desire to pursue sex, right? And to initiate it, right? And thinks about it all the time and is ready at a moment's notice. Like, guess who tends to have assertive desire? It tends to be tied to testosterone and other typically male hormones. But there's a whole nother kind of desire. It's called receptive desire.
Okay.
Someone who has receptive desire is just as willing and just as interested, and here's a key, enjoys it just as much when it's happening, but does not have the same desire to pursue it or initiate it, doesn't think about it all the time, and is not ready at a moment's notice.
So it feels like this person has the ability to respond when and if initiated to, but they will virtually never initiate, or they're not inclined to initiate.
Not as inclined to initiate. And this tends to be tied to typically female hormones, although, as we said, there's some couples that are flipped, right? But here's the key. The person with receptive desire has to be approached completely 100% differently. She's got to know what you've got on your menu for the evening before you get to the bedroom. And that's the biggest issue, is that men are like, how can you not be thinking about this? Because they're thinking about it. How can you not be ready at a moment's notice? Because that's them. And so when she's not, they feel undesirable. And that has almost nothing to do with it. The main reason, again, maybe she doesn't feel close to you. That could be a big one. Okay, that's there. But the main reason is that even if she does feel close to you, and even if you're doing all the sweet things, and even if you're helping her with the chores and you're scrubbing the toilet, she's not thinking about sex, right? Like you might be.
She's not connecting the dots there.
He's not, it's just not occurring to her. And of course, Jeff, whenever we talk about this, he's like, how can it not occur to you? But we're wired differently by a God who knew what he was doing. Okay. This was a purposeful thing that God did. I don't know why, but this was a purposeful thing that he created us differently with this different set of hormones, different set of brain wiring that created this receptive desire. So the key, because all the guys are like, okay, so tell me what I do. So the key is she does have to know in advance what you would love to happen later. Her brain has to be woken up to that in advance.
So it's like on her radar now.
It's on her radar. And now, guys, I know what every man listening to this is thinking, because you're thinking, you mean I need to warn her?
Like that doesn't feel so good. I'm trying to have a little bit of an allergic reaction to this because because it feels like she would be offended if I therefore said, honey, by the way, I want to put you on notice. I'm interested in having sex tonight. So therefore, that's on the agenda. That's the menu. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll scrub the toilet, I'll do the kitchen floor, I'll do the dishes, and I'll do a load of laundry, because now she's going to feel like, wait a minute, you're doing all that stuff to try to just get me to have sex with you.
So here's the thing. Disconnect all the stuff that you're doing from the idea of advance notice, okay? What we call anticipation time. It's not warning. Okay, because guys are like, that doesn't feel so good. It's truly waking her brain up to it so she can anticipate it later. Okay. And you've got to disconnect it from all the stuff, the chores, the this, the that, because frankly, then it is a problem because you are just doing that stuff instead of you care about her and you love her and you want to be sweet to her and help her. You're doing it to get something. And she can spot that motivation a mile away.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's not going to work.
Those need to be disconnected. You do those things because you do those things and you care about your wife. What I'm talking about with anticipation time is something different. I'll give you an example.
Please.
So for example, early on as we were doing the research on this, I can't remember what it was that Jeff had done. We were talking over breakfast. And I said, oh, thanks for doing that. That was really sweet of you. And he kind of grinned at me and he cocked an eye. He said, just remember that later tonight. And it was this little flirty comment. Okay. But it got my brain thinking in a direction I totally wouldn't have been thinking in. And then, if you're tired later or you just don't end up connecting or he gets home late or you're home late or whatever, it's like, it's fine. But you're flirting with your wife. You're making her feel something that's a really special emotional feeling. And sometimes it's okay. This is something that it's important for guys to be willing sometimes just to flirt and hug her and make cute comments and pinch her rear end. just to do those things without
Absolutely.
expecting anything later.
Right.
But the key is that if you are hoping for something later, it is essential that she have anticipation time, because otherwise she is just not going to be thinking about it. And guys, I know that's hard to hear because you want to be desired, you want to be wanted, and you think if she's not thinking about it in advance, then she doesn't want me. No, it's not the same. It's like we're two different species. We're not connecting in that way. It doesn't mean she doesn't want you. It means she's wired physiologically differently. If you go to the gym with your wife, you would not expect her to bench press the same amount of weight. She's physically different. So don't expect her to be physically the same in this area either. So it just will matter to have that anticipation time. It also matters, though, for you to help her understand all that emotional stuff in your heart that we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Because if she doesn't understand that, then you've got an emotional disconnect where she doesn't realize the importance of this emotionally either.
Okay, so just so that I'm understanding, it is appropriate and necessary that at some point the husband tries to send a signal to his wife. I don't like the word notify her, but
Anticipation time.
a signal that cues her or insinuates, it's a flirtation, it's an insinuation. I'm interested in you. Hey, maybe tonight, is this possible? Like,
Wake her brain up.
she needs to get this cue. You're saying wake up her brain, like plant a seed almost.
Yeah.
A seed of anticipation to let her know that you're interested, that you would like this to maybe be able to happen.
Yeah. And then she'll be truly anticipating it, as opposed to one one wife said, we actually put this quote in For Men Only in the sex chapter because it cracked me up so much, where she said it's like, I've just fallen into bed. It's been the longest day. I've had my eye on the prize of being able to just go to sleep. And then my husband rolls over and says, "What you doing over there?"
Right.
And it's not that I don't want to be with him. It's just that is the furthest thing from my thoughts right now.
It's like way too abrupt and way too short of notice. Like
Yeah, it's her brain is no. She's been anticipating something completely different all day.
Right.
And that is, oh, I get to read a book and sleep. So
Can I ask this, Shaunti? It feels like, I mean, in a way, don't most women already know, like they really, you need to be notified that I might be interested in sex tonight? Don't they already pretty much know that their husband, like it could be go time, like anytime, Like,
so
really, you need me to notify you that I might be interested in sex?
so here's the reality is that I think in the backs of our minds, yes, women know men want sex, like in a kind of a hypothetical way. It doesn't mean we are thinking about it though. We're busy with everything else. We're running
Right.
around after the kids. We're working, we're doing volunteer work, whatever it is that we're doing, that's what's on our mind.
So it's a
We don't.
matter of trying to get on the same wavelength.
Correct. Now here's the upside of this though, is if you make this a habit, and she's going to have to get in the understanding too and understand the importance of this, and then realizing that this is an awesome thing for the marriage, and then she'll want to do this more. And once she realizes how powerful this is and how it helps her connect with her husband, and she enjoys it, and then it becomes more of a thing. Once that process, that positive cycle starts to happen, then she's more attuned to it and not having to have that anticipation time, because she's kind of thinking, it's been a few days. I bet that this is something he'd be interested in. And it's just sort of, you're sort of aware of it, even though you wouldn't otherwise have been, but it's more there. Now, I will say, by the way, that a key component of this for men and women to be aware of, and I'm sure you've probably discussed this on your show before. You probably know a lot more about this than I do, but clinically, from what I understand from talking to the neurologists and the sex therapists and the people about the science behind it, is that roughly if you're having sex about once a week or more, that keeps your testosterone levels at a level where you kind of want it, sort of, even as a woman. Like, women have testosterone too.
Like the pump is primed a little
The
bit. You
pump,
keep
yes.
it primed.
And so she's able to want it, as opposed to kind of having this feeling like, oh, really, I'm just so tired, or just not being interested because the testosterone level isn't high enough for her to be interested. That is roughly about once a week. And the problem is when it goes below that, and sometimes in some marriages significantly below that, then her testosterone level has dropped to almost nothing, and it has to be built back up. And she has to be willing. And this is what we tell the women when I do the women's conferences. And, a lot of times we even talk about this. There's a lot of churches that have had me come in on Sunday mornings. A lot of pastors interview me on stage as the sermon time, and maybe they'll do like a pure sex series or something. And they often want me to explain this in sort of PG terms, of course, on
Right.
a Sunday morning, so that the women in the whole congregation understand that this really is something that is a positive cycle that can be created, but to help the men understand to have the patience, while women are sort of growing in this area of knowledge and seeing what a huge difference it makes to our marriages, which is the best incentive to continue.
That's really very intriguing what you just said. I'm very intrigued by that and interested. So in other words, if a couple can get to the place where they're having a reasonably consistent sexual rhythm, you're saying at least once a week,
Once a week.
it kind of nurtures a level of testosterone even in the wife. And once that level is there, then it's going to be easier for her to jumpstart because
Correct.
that testosterone is there and it's doing its job.
Correct.
Wow.
And if she's not as interested, it's usually because that level of testosterone has just fallen so low. And then it takes a decision on both the husband's and the wife's part to say, okay, is this something that, where he's willing to flirt and give her anticipation time, and she's willing to say, okay, I'm going to respond, because in most cases, even though there are issues, people have clinical issues sexually, painful process, there's clinical issues that can get in the way, but the majority of time, once it's happening, she enjoys it, right? So it's just a matter of getting into that process.
Okay. So there's an old adage that says men are like microwaves, women are like crock pots.
Yes.
So I was going to ask, it typically takes a woman longer to get in the mood, right, for sexual intimacy with her husband. So I was going to ask you to speak to that issue. I guess you already are.
That's
but
it, right.
But so this is how you kind of prime the pump.
Correct.
And it feels like, therefore, I don't know, it feels like it would be healthy for a husband and wife to both be aware of this. Kind of, it feels like kind of a relational dance, an emotional, relational, sexual dance where he has to be willing to do his part, where he's kind of creating this emotional environment.
Absolutely.
And appreciating his wife and kind of willing to prime the pump to try to give her the signal that I'm interested, to wake up her brain. But she needs to be in the place where she's open to receiving these signals and allowing those signals then to get her anticipation kind of going, where she's willing to maybe try to get in the mood. And
Great way of putting it. And the key to that is her understanding what we talked about first. This is not a selfish physical demand on his part. This is an emotional need that he's crying out for.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I've got a question that I wanted to ask, if I could read just a quote from your book, this is from Men Only, page 142 and 143. For her, sex starts in the heart. Her body's ability to respond to you sexually is tied to how she feels emotionally about you at the moment. One woman explained it to her husband this way: all my power to turn you on is how I look. But where you have the power and where I don't is how you treated me today. It's all emotional. Can
Yep.
you explain why emotional connection is so important for most women to experience sexual connection with their husband?
So this was that second reason, right? Why, if it's not happening, this is one of the main reasons why. So, you know how we talked earlier about when you said what is the reason for this with men, emotionally, and I said we know one of the main reasons, which is his insecurity and his vulnerability and his self-doubt about whether he's any good and whether he measures up, right? Well, it turns out women have an insecurity and a vulnerability too. It's just a very different one. And it's what leads to their need to have that emotional connection with their husband, the emotional side of this. And because our insecurity as women is essentially, am I lovable? And that does not go away in marriage. A lot of guys, because when you get married, you see your wife walk down the aisle and you say your I do's, you sign the papers, you're like, okay, cool, on to the on to the next thing. And there is no switch in her brain that gets flipped to the, oh, now I feel permanently loved position. And she is going to have that, am I lovable question every day. Am I special? Am I beautiful? Right? Am I worthy of being loved? And that is in there regardless, just like your do I measure up question is in there regardless. And so the issue for her is in marriage, it basically morphs to, is he glad he married me? Would he choose me all over again? Like
Wow.
that's what it becomes in marriage. It doesn't go away. It becomes more acute in some ways. And so when you're walking across a parking lot and you reach across and take her hand, that says, I'm so glad I married you. Or when you're tired after a long day of work and she wants to tell you about something that happened with the kids or something that happened with her friend, or wants you to talk about, tell me about what you're thinking about your boss and is he still being mean to you? And you sit and talk and you listen to her. That says, I'm so glad I married you.
Okay, see, that's so good, Shaunti. And I feel like sometimes us guys, we tend to be like Bam Bam and we don't quite get it. And I'm picturing this metaphor, like if we had a group of, let's say, 50 men, and we said to these men, okay, guys, right now I want you to talk Chinese, speak in Chinese. They couldn't do it. They don't know the language. So it's almost like our wives have this language that they speak. It's an emotional language. So we say to these 50 guys, okay, guys, go home and speak to your wives emotionally. Not words, not using physical words, but an emotional language. You need to learn to speak to your wife with this language that I'm not sure most guys know how to do that. So can you give us some tips? You just mentioned two. Maybe one is as simple as you're walking out of the store, take her hand, hold her hand. That's like an emotional language. Like, how do we speak this emotional language to our wives that affirms to them, I love you. I'm so glad I married you. You're so special to me. I'm blessed that you're my wife. How do we create this sense of affirmation and security that she's longing for?
So what you're asking is essentially all the stuff that we spend all that time researching, right? And so here's the I'll give you the most frequently mentioned examples, but I would encourage the men to as you do this, become an investigator of your wife, become a student, like try certain things and watch how she responds, right? And then you're going to be in a position where you can raise this with her and say, is this true of you? And what is it that I do that gets this across? Because this is how I feel, right? This is how I feel about you. It's just I didn't know some of these things mattered to you. And so some of the things that we saw mentioned, and this was both, and I should explain, there were two different research studies that led to this. One is the big one of women for the For Men Only book that you mentioned. But we also narrowed it down a little more precisely. It's kind of a long story, but we did another survey, another study of the most happily married couples. And what are they doing differently from everybody else? And in that study, we identified the top things that seem to make the most difference emotionally to women. So here's what those are, and we can get into others if you want to. Some form, one thing is, and this is, by the way, these are little things to do every single day. Okay, they're little, but you have to get in your mind the idea of doing them regularly, and it becomes a habit pretty
I
quickly.
love that because it makes it doable. I don't have to
Yeah,
I don't have to know a magic formula. I don't have to do
no,
some big, gigantic, magnificent, extravagant
no,
episodes. Just
no.
little things, the accumulation of these little
Yes,
things.
yes. It's because the big things take so long and they're so exhausting that you don't do them very often. And that's so the whole point is kind of lost. So it's far better to do these little things every day than to do a big one every now and then. Okay. And that's what guys just don't realize. Again, you're wired differently than we are. So the little things here's the little things that matter most. So some form of physical affection that is not sex related. And it's physical affection that says one message: you're mine. I'm so glad I married you.
So I can touch her hand, hold her hand, give her a little hug, kiss on the cheek, foot rub.
Like I mean, think how simple this is. You're sitting together at church, you put your arm around her in church, and you just sit there for 10 minutes with your arm around her. Oh my goodness. You have no idea what a big deal that is to most women. You're driving in a car and you put your hand on her knee. And then, let's just say this is a new thing for you. You haven't put your arm around her. You haven't held her hand. You haven't put your hand on her knee. Then you don't ask for sex later. She's going to feel like he really meant that. Like it just wasn't to get something. It's that's how he feels about me.
Wow.
Okay. So you have to, like I said earlier, you have to deconnect some of these things for a bit.
Right.
Okay. It'll eventually pay off, but deconnect them at the beginning. But some form of physical affection that says you're mine and I'm so glad I married you. Okay. Whatever those things are. And that's, by the way, the case even for, you're probably familiar with the 5 love languages by,
Yes, Gary Chapman.
that's the case even for women whose love language is not physical touch. It just matters. Okay. So that's the one of the first things. The second thing that matters are little signals that says I'm thinking about you and I care about you. And it could be literally like you send her a text message during the day that says, this has been such a tough day. My boss is all over me. Thanks so much for your encouragement. I love you so much. Can't wait to see you tonight. 10 seconds.
Awesome. Or she loves Butterfinger candy bars, so you bring her a Butterfinger. It shows you thought of me.
Right. Whatever that is, it's some little mechanism that shows I'm thinking about you, and some direct communication of some kind is usually the best. Okay. Like if you're giving her the Butterfinger bar, put a sticky note on that and says, "'Cause I know you like it," or something. So that's one type of example. And often the guys say the voice message or the text message are the easiest ones to do because you don't have to go out and buy a Butterfinger bar. Like it's literally just I'm thinking about you. Done, right?
Awesome.
The third type of action that matters, and this is a piece of a bigger topic, but it's worth mentioning, is if you're not in a great mood, if you're grumpy, because guys, every now and then you get into you're grumpy. You've got
Of
the black
course.
cloud of doom following you around the house, right? Surprising to men, it makes a huge difference to women if you make an effort to pull yourself out of that funk. Because what happens while you're in that funk, you think it's only about you. I'm just stewing about the boss. Rah, 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 rah. Okay. And it's not, because while she sees you in this funk, here's what happens in her heart. Remember that insecurity, that question? Am I lovable? Which becomes, is he glad he married me? While he's in that funk, it looks to her like he is the furthest thing from glad that he married you.
She kind of takes it personally, in other
Oh,
words.
100% personally. Even if it's nothing to do with her.
Even if her intellect is telling her this isn't about you, it's about him and work, but like emotionally, she feels like it's about her.
Absolutely. And because it is, in a way, in her mind, because if he loved being married to her, then just the act of coming home and being with his wife and kids would be enough that he wasn't in this funk. So clearly, he's not as glad to be married to me as I am to be married to him. Right. And so clearly there's a reason to be insecure, and her brain goes in all these directions, which are completely ridiculous, but that's just the way we're wired. And it makes a huge difference if he's willing to make the effort to pull himself out of that funk. And if he's having such a difficulty that he can't, or maybe the funk is about her, right? Maybe you are arguing. Maybe you had an argument over breakfast. Before you leave, before you walk out of the door, because you're going to walk out, go to work and forget about it. She's going to go walk out of the door, go to work and be thinking about it all day. Right? Before you leave, you've got to say something to her like, look, I'm angry. I need space, but I want you to know we're okay. You're reassuring her. This isn't the beginning of things going bad. This is just an argument. It's fine. We'll get through this. We'll come back and talk about it or whatever. Okay. So that's some of the things that really matter. Another one that does matter a lot to women is just the same way that sex is emotionally powerful to a man, listening is emotionally powerful to a woman. Conversation, being able to share her heart and hear yours is really critical. And if you don't talk with her, if she has to get that from her best girlfriends because you won't give her that, that's dangerous.
Wow, that's really powerful. Communication, just talking to each other, listening, caring.
Yeah, and there's a whole nother thing in For Men Only about what listening means. Like in the bottom line, the shortcut is that it means listening to her feelings and pulling out how she's feeling about whatever it is that's going on. Rather than, it's easy for a guy because he loves his wife. He wants to take away the reason why she's feeling bad by trying to fix the problem. And for a woman, that doesn't fix the problem because the problem isn't the problem. The problem is that she's feeling bad.
Right.
So listening to her feeling and pulling them out, I'm so sorry your boss embarrassed you in front of the group. How did that make you feel? And what did Jessica say? And, were you embarrassed? And, those kinds of things, that is life-giving.
So, guys, this is gold. I mean, Shaunti is giving us nuggets here, and I feel like, Jesus would often say at the end of a teaching, let him who has ears to hear, hear. And I feel like Shaunti is just saying so many beautiful, awesome things, and I just pray that we have ears to hear, because some of the stuff that she's sharing, I think, will help us be better men, better husbands, and be more sensitive and more tuned into our wives. And I think that's what we're really after. So I'm sure you guys can tell just by listening to Shaunti, she is just full of wisdom and information and knowledge that we have everything to gain from. And Shaunti, I just so appreciate you being here with us and sharing with us. This has been such a blessing. Thank you so much.
It's been a blessing to me. Thanks for what you do.
And I'm very interested. I was sincere when I said I'd love to have you back. I wouldn't want to impose upon you, but maybe at some point in the future we can have you back and continue this discussion.
Absolutely. I would love that.
I know that it would be so helpful to so many people. So God bless you, Shaunti. Thank you for being with us. And with that being said, guys, I see that we're out of time, so we need to wrap up this episode. But I just want to thank you so much for being here for this episode of the Power of Purity podcast. I pray that it's been a blessing and an encouragement to you on your journey. God bless you guys, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week in our next episode. God bless you.
Thanks for listening. Visit powerofpurity.org for more resources and information. And if this podcast has been helpful or encouraging, please invite a friend to listen. Until next time, remember, there's power in purity.